Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there is a ton of news stories to get into today, and I know. I've been away for a little while, so it's difficult to jump back onto that pro wrestling treadmill, even though I've been off it for like 10 days. But let's talk about some names that Impact Wrestling did want for Bound for Glory. Obviously, a lot of people expected to see maybe Braun Strowman, Titan, Adam Scherr, whatever you want to call him, Bronson Reed, possibly Bray Wyatt as well. A lot of people thought people were going to show up at Bound for Glory last weekend, or the prior weekend rather, and they did not. So what happened? Well, Impact Wrestling made attempts to beef up Bound for Glory by reaching out to a couple of different former WWE stars. This is according to a report by Fightful Select. Now, Braun Strowman, Adam Scherr, was expected to debut for Impact soon after he had that meeting that we touched on here on the channel with Impact Wrestling Executive Vice President Scott D'Amore. Now, talent even expected him to show up at the pay-per-view, but he has not signed a contract with Impact Wrestling as of right now, which is quite surprising considering everyone assumed it was a formality and a done deal. Not to say that he won't, but he hasn't right now. Now, Bray Wyatt was also asked about coming in, but a deal between the two sides has said to be never been close. Now, obviously, Bray Wyatt now, his non-compete clause is finally up. October 31st, yesterday, was the final day of Bray Wyatt's 90-day non-compete clause. He is allowed now to sign with any pro wrestling company he wishes, appear at any pro wrestling event he wants, so we'll have to keep an eye out because he could show up for AEW, he could show up for Impact Wrestling, could show up anywhere. Bray Wyatt has, or shall we say Wyndham Rotunda, has been posting some very cryptic tweets over the course of the last few days, so we'll have to keep an eye out for that one. But when it comes to Impact Wrestling, a deal was never said to be closed. Now, obviously, like I said, his 90-day non-compete clause was never up, so he was never actually going to appear at the event. It was out of the question, but some people had spoken about that as well. The interesting one that I think is quite interesting to touch on is that former NXT North American champion Bronson Reed was actually booked to be at Bound for Glory. Now, his appearance was then later cancelled. At the time it was reported it was cancelled for unknown reasons. We might know a bit more about that because Bronson Reed did an interview with Nick Hausman of Wrestling Inc. Great interview, by the way. Be sure to check it out. And essentially, without mentioning Impact Wrestling by name, he said that, of course, Bronson Reed is from Australia. He's been having a few visa issues and some immigration issues, and essentially his paperwork isn't complete for him to actually do anything to gain monetary value. In the sense of he can't sign anywhere or he can't appear at a pro wrestling event that he's going to get paid for because his visa stuff hasn't been completed yet. Now, he did say during the interview that it's a matter of days and probably in November, which we are in now, he will be able to start appearing places. Now, he hasn't wrestled for 3 months. It's kind of the same issue that the Iconics, the Inspiration, the new Knockouts Tag Team Champions, by the way, had, in the sense that they couldn't do anything for a while. They had their own podcast, but they couldn't make any money off their own podcast. They couldn't sign anywhere until all of their visa stuff was figured out. And remember, they were let go by WWE back in April, and it took them all the way to October to get all of that stuff resolved. It wasn't a case of waiting out the 90-day non-compete clause. It was waiting that out and getting the visa stuff sorted, getting the immigration stuff sorted. Now, thankfully for Bronson Reed, it's not going to take as long for him, but that is something to consider as well. So Bronson Reed, he's one that, or Jonah, whatever you want to call him, that's the name he's going to be going by on the independent scene or in his post-WWE career, certainly. Jonah has said that, you know, he's going to be appearing somewhere very soon. There were reports last night coming out that New Japan Pro Wrestling are very interested in signing the former NXT North American champion as well. But it looks very likely he's going to show up in Impact Wrestling because he was booked for the show. It's not a case of him being booked and Impact Wrestling went, you know what, we don't want Bronson Reed actually. Give him a phone call. I think in reality it was a case of they called him. They said, will you be able to appear? He said, look, I'm having some visa stuff, some immigration stuff. I think it'll be done in time. So book me. If not, I'll let you know. And it looks like he let them know to say, look, it's not figured out yet or it's not finished yet. But he will be showing up eventually. That's the situation. So Bronson Reed, you might as well say he signed with Impact Wrestling. At the very, very, very least, he is going to appear in the company. It's just a case of dotting the I's, crossing the T's in terms of the immigration stuff. The Braun Strowman one, Adam Scherr, Titan, is surprising. I think most people going into Bound for Glory assumed that he would be there, and they were waiting all night. Is now going to be the moment, is now going to be the moment, and he never showed up. And it's fascinating because it's fascinating to you have to kind of delve into these kind of things and try and figure out, okay, what was Impact putting out there? What have other people been putting out there? And where is the truth in the matter? I get the impression, and I might be wrong, but we saw and we read that Braun Strowman had met with Scott D'Amore. We'd heard that the feeling in the Impact Wrestling locker room was that Braun Strowman had signed with Impact, or was at the very least going to sign with Impact. He was going to be there at Bound for Glory. Now to get a report that comes out to say, look, that he hasn't signed a deal as of right now, implies that maybe the deal isn't as close as we thought, and we're Impact Wrestling putting out the noise to their roster and putting out the noise to the dirt sheets and the fans that the deal was closer than it actually was, to maybe drive up some buzz or drive up some momentum for Bound for Glory. I don't know, but it was certainly surprising that he didn't show up. Do I expect him still to show up eventually? I think so. I think I do. I think from an Impact Wrestling point of view, they would have hoped that it would have been at Bound for Glory. The next pay-per-view technically is Turning Point later this month. That is a live pay-per-view event, I think. It might be on Impact Plus. Usually it's on Impact Plus, but I think it's an actual pay-per-view event later this month. So there is absolutely a possibility he could show up at Turning Point as well. So in the grand scheme of things, is it a massive deal? No. They had the cliffhanger where they had Josh Alexander win the Impact World Championship, then he lost it straight away to Moose. So they've got that storyline going on. Now they've got Josh Alexander with Minoru Suzuki and all that kind of stuff too. So they have stuff going on. It's not as if Adam Scherr, Braun Strowman is completely crucial to the plans they have right now. Although it must be said, the Moose thing did kind of feel to me like a pivot, and I'm still not thrilled on that outcome. I get that it was a cliffhanger, and I get it was something that people didn't see coming, and I get that maybe Impact thought they had to put a shot in the arm of their product at the moment, but I don't know. I felt that they spent however long building to a moment. Well, they spent nearly a year building to a moment of having an Impact Wrestling guy win the championship back off an AEW guy. And at the end of the day, they did have an Impact guy holding the title up at the end of the show. But I don't know. I just don't think it was the right thing to do. I don't, because I think that moment was meant to be to build up Josh Alexander. And look, I've been critical of Impact's booking of Moose ever since he re-signed with the company. So it's not that I'm against Moose being the Impact World Champion. I'm not. It's just strange. I think it's strange booking. They haven't really given us a reason to believe Moose is believable world champion. But certainly the momentum he had in June, July, isn't there, or isn't what it was, and it just felt odd. But going back to these signings, I've said before, do I think Bray Wyatt's going to go to Impact? No, I think he's going to go to AEW. Do I think Braun Strowman will eventually go to Impact? Yes, I do. I do think he will sign with Impact Wrestling eventually, and obviously it looks like Bronson Reed is going to as well. So that's the kind of the update, but I guess the update is that it's kind of more of the same until we hear something different. Now, speaking of the post-Bound for Glory episode of Impact Wrestling, we do have an update when it comes to the ratings, the viewership, because Thursday's post-Bound for Glory edition of Impact Wrestling drew 100,000 viewers on Access TV, according to Nielsen via WrestleNomics. Now, this is up nearly 7.5% from last week's 93,000 viewers for the Bound for Glory Go Home show. The episode drew a 0.03 rating in the key 18 to 49 demographic, which is up 50% from last week's 0.02 key demo rating. This week's Impact episode did not rank in the cable top 150 for the fourth consecutive week. The episode 5 weeks ago ranked 142 in the cable top 150 in the key demo rating and 140 in terms of viewership, but we don't know anything else since. I think it's important to point out that Impact's viewership for Thursday was down nearly 30% from the same week in 2020. Of course, as has been the case since NFL really returned, but certainly it's the case since they moved to Thursdays earlier this year, the NFL game between the Packers and the Cardinals on the NFL Network topped the night in the cable top 150 with a 1.14 rating in that key 18 to 49 demographic. So Impact Wrestling, again, is getting killed when it comes to the viewership, and I don't really want to talk too much in depth about it because I feel like I'm beating a dead horse at this point. I've said my piece when it comes to the Impact ratings. Obviously, we're talking about small numbers anyway, but in comparison to earlier this year, like I said, in comparison to earlier this year, Impact Wrestling was drawing 186,000, 170,000, 197,000, for the Post No Surrender episode. They're getting close to 200,000, which is, I think the record is 221, which is that Kenny Omega debut episode last year. They were getting closer to that. They were still hovering around that near 200,000 mark. And since fans come back, since spoilers have been out on the internet, since they've moved back to Thursdays and they have the NFL competition, or they have stronger competition, they have struggled. obviously there are plenty of other ways to consume Impact Wrestling content, whether it is on YouTube, whether it is on demand, whether it is on social media, whether it is wherever, however you consume the content. I know Impact Wrestling on Access TV is difficult to view because not many people have Access TV or can't access Access TV. I use that pun all the time. Still, in your post Bound for Glory episode, to be drawing 100,000, they can't be happy with that. And they still have to find a solution to that. As to what that solution is, I've said before, whether it's a case of going live on Thursday nights, I think would help. I know live TV is more expensive, but it's not a case of if Anthem can't afford it. They're in negotiations with Braun Strowman and they want to get Bray Wyatt in. If they can afford to sign Braun Strowman to a contract, if they can afford to sign Bray Wyatt or want to sign Bray Wyatt to a contract, they can afford to go live every single week. Of course they can. So I think that's something they have to consider. They have to consider that to get those numbers back up. Go live, or if you're going to stay taped with fans, you're going to have to get them to sign a confidentiality agreement, you know, an NDA. If you come to the tapings, you can't leak it out. If you do, we can, I don't know, sue you, whatever it may be. They have to figure out something because the numbers aren't great. And even when you're having people like Minoru Suzuki or even Omega when he was there and Christian Cage, it made no difference. No difference whatsoever. And the product's still reasonably good. It does feel a little bit flat, but the product's still reasonably good. And it's like, again, that big cliffhanger at the end of Bound for Glory, it's like it didn't happen because it didn't affect the ratings one bit. Yes, it was up 7,000 viewers from the prior week, but we're talking, that's hardly anything. I know when you're talking about small sample size, maybe it is, but there are still issues that they have to fix when it comes to that. And a lot of you have said in the comments before, go live. I think that's a fair and valid point, and I think that's something they do need to look into. And again, I don't think they can even say, well, you know, it's affordability. Well, again, if you're signing a Braun Strowman or you want to sign a Bray Wyatt, you're going to afford to go live. That's just my feelings on the situation. A title we did see change hands at Bound for Glory was the Knockouts Championship, which I found really surprising. Really, really surprising because I just assumed that Mickie James was coming back to put Deonna Purrazzo over because Deonna Purrazzo has been beating everyone and everyone else has been happy to put her over. So I was surprised to see Mickie James win it. Obviously, it means that Mickie James is going to be sticking around in Impact Wrestling for far longer than I guess we originally had thought. Again, not a bad thing at all. She can still go. She's a legend. I still do think the end goal is to eventually Deonna Purrazzo has the rematch with Mickie James. Possibly they main event a pay-per-view, a big pay-per-view, Hard to Kill, January. If the end game of having Mickie James win the title was that actually we're going to main event a pay-per-view, instead of not being the main event that we were at Bound for Glory, let's run it back and have Mickie James put over Deonna Purrazzo in the main event of a pay-per-view. That makes way more sense, and we get Mickie James for however many more months, 3 months, 4 months, however long it is. That's got to be a bonus to Impact Wrestling. So whilst I was surprised, I don't think it's a bad thing whatsoever. And it does open up matches like the next challenger for the Knockouts Championship, which of course is Mercedes Martinez, who won the Knockouts Knockdown tournament, because Mercedes Martinez is set to be the second challenger for the new Impact Wrestling Knockouts champion, Mickie James. Of course, at Bound for Glory, James defeated Deonna Purrazzo to win the championship and has been seen on Impact this past week and at the post Bound for Glory television tapings. An angle was done to set up the Martinez versus James feud. It has been announced that James will defend her title against Martinez at the Turning Point special on Saturday, November 20th. Now, Martinez will be James's second challenger, as a successful title defense over Madison Rayne was also taped over the weekend too. Of course, the match is set to air on Access TV over the course of the next few weeks. Again, she earned that opportunity by winning the Knockouts Knockdown tournament. So, two veterans. I'm interested in it. Like I said, Impact Wrestling, of all the people throughout the last year or so they've had going out of the door, specifically in the Knockouts division, they always find a way to replace it. Mercedes Martinez, Mickie James, I'm fascinated to see it. It should be a great match between two veterans. Of course, Mickie James is going to win. And I think eventually the title will go back on Deonna Purrazzo because she's the best, one of the best pro wrestlers of any gender that they have in the company. And I think the end goal is to have Mickie James eventually put over Deonna Purrazzo. But Mickie James versus Mercedes Martinez, sign me up. Should be great. Should be absolutely fantastic. Finally, I want to talk about Tommy Dreamer. Yes, I know we have to. But Tommy Dreamer has returned to the Sirius XM airwaves. We don't know any updates when it comes to Impact Wrestling yet. But the former ECW World Champion resumed his co-hosting duties on Busted Open Radio last week. It was his first appearance on the show since September. Now, alongside host Dave LaGreca, Dreamer reviewed NXT and in a segment featuring former WCW wrestler Crowbar, paid tribute to the late Daphne, who of course passed away on September 1st. The Busted Open podcast, which is posted, shortly after the conclusion of the radio broadcast and contains only portions of the show, featured no mention of Dreamer's absence from the show, nor touched upon why his hiatus has ended. Now, Dreamer, of course, disappeared from the Busted Open radio airwaves following a series of controversial statements on Vice TV's Dark Side of the Ring, the episode on the notorious plane ride from How Instant. Now, during the episode, which aired on September 16, Dreamer defended Ric Flair, who was accused of flight attendant Heidi Doyle of assault during a flight. Now, Dreamer further downplayed the accusations of Doyle, insinuating she wasn't believable due to settling her lawsuit with WWE over the incident out of court. Now, the following day, Impact Wrestling, where Dreamer works as a member of the creative team, suspended Dreamer indefinitely for his conduct. Now, several days later after that, LaGreca announced on Busted Open Radio that Dreamer would not be appearing on the program for the foreseeable future, and that his remarks would not be tolerated. Now, to date, he has not returned to Impact, though Dreamer did promote Impact's Bound for Glory pay-per-view last weekend, or the weekend prior rather. Also co-hosted by Bully Ray and AEW performer Mark Henry, Busted Open Radio is known for promoting their shows throughout the day on social media. It is notable that on the day that Dreamer returned, Busted Open did not promote his appearance on Twitter and only mentioned Dreamer when posting the link to the podcast version. So there's a lot to break down there, I know. Look, cancel culture, I don't really want to get into a discussion about that. I think it speaks volumes that they brought Dreamer back, but they didn't promote it, because it would imply, right, what are you trying to hide? You're trying to hide that you know people are going to be upset by this, yet you're doing it anyway. For what Dreamer said, should he lose his job? I don't want to see anyone lose their job. I want to see people grow and learn. He did apologize. It doesn't change for me what he said, his actions. Do I think he's learned from the incident? I don't know. You'd have to ask Tommy Dreamer about that. But again, I think it speaks volumes. It really does speak volumes that they didn't promote it and they didn't really address it. All we want is transparency in this issue. If Dave LaGreca came out and said, look, he did, you know, he served a suspension or we didn't get paid, whatever, and addressed it, I think it's almost, I don't want to say cowardice, but I think it says a lot that they didn't address the incident. And almost like they know that maybe it's not the right call to bring him back. I don't know. I think it's interesting to see that Busted Open brought him back and didn't say anything. I think that speaks volumes. We don't know what's going on with Impact Wrestling. Do I think he'll come back to Impact? I do. I do think he'll come back to Impact because I think they value his creativity there. But certainly it would depend on how several other people in the company feel, in Anthem feel, people on the roster feel. It's very difficult to be given creative by someone that you've lost a lot of respect for, isn't it? So once we hear more about that, we'll of course talk about it here on the channel. But look, guys, as always, it's just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on all of these Impact Wrestling news stories we've spoken about today? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about Impact Wrestling, AEW, WWE, New Japan Pro Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved in the community, drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. Really does help us out here on YouTube. Got the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to WrestleNews365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or have you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.